The United States presidential election of 1800 was the fourth quadrennial presidential election. It was held from Friday, October 31 to Wednesday, December 3, 1800. In what is sometimes referred to as the Revolution of 1800, Vice President Thomas Jefferson defeated President John Adams. The election was a realigning election that ushered in a generation of Democratic-Republican Party rule and the eventual demise of the Federalist Party in the first-party system. It was a long, bitter rematch of the 1796 election between the pro-French and pro-decentralization Democratic-Republicans under Jefferson and Aaron Burr, against incumbent Adams and Charles Pinckney's pro-British and pro-centralization Federalists. The chief political issues included opposition to the tax imposed by Congress to pay for the mobilization of the new Army and the Navy in the Quasi-War against France in 1798, and the Alien and Sedition Acts, by which Federalists were trying to stifle dissent, especially by Democratic-Republican newspaper editors. While the Democratic-Republicans were well organized at the state and local levels, the Federalists were disorganized, and suffered a bitter split between their two major leaders, President Adams and Alexander Hamilton. The jockeying for electoral votes, regional divisions, and the propaganda smear campaigns created by both parties made the election recognizably modern. The election exposed one of the flaws in the original Constitution. Members of the Electoral College were authorized by the original Constitution to vote for two names for president. The Democratic Republicans had planned for one of the electors to abstain from casting his second vote for Aaron Burr, which would have led to Jefferson receiving one electoral vote more than Burr. The plan, however, was mishandled. Each elector who voted for Jefferson also voted for Burr, resulting in a tied electoral vote. The election was then put into the hands of the outgoing House of Representatives, which, after 35 votes in which neither Jefferson nor Burr obtained a majority, elected Jefferson on the 36th ballot. To rectify the flaw in the original presidential election mechanism, the 12th Amendment, ratified in 1804, was added to the United States Constitution, stipulating that electors make a discrete choice between their selections for president and vice president. The result of this election was affected by the 3/5 clause. Had slaves not been counted as persons for purposes of congressional apportionment, Adams would have won, albeit with a lower number of popular votes than Jefferson. Jefferson was subsequently criticized as having won the Temple of Liberty on the shoulders of slaves. General election. Candidates == John Adams, President of the United States from Massachusetts; Aaron Burr, former U.S. Senator from New York; Thomas Jefferson, Vice President of the United States from Virginia; Charles Pinckney, former U.S. Minister to France from South Carolina. Federalist Candidates Gallery. Democratic-Republican Candidates Gallery. Campaign. The 1800 election was a rematch of the 1796 election. The campaign was bitter and characterized by slander and personal attacks on both sides. Federalists spread rumors that the Democratic Republicans were radicals who would ruin the country. In 1798, George Washington had complained that you could as soon scrub the black or more white, as to change the principles of a professed Democrat. And that he will leave nothing unattempted to overturn the government of this country. Meanwhile, the Democratic Republicans accused Federalists of destroying Democratic-Republican values, not to mention political support from immigrants, with the Alien and Sedition Acts, some of which were later declared unconstitutional after their expiration by the Supreme Court. They also accused Federalists of favoring Britain in order to promote aristocratic, anti-democratic Republican values. Adams was attacked by both the opposition Democratic Republicans and a group of so-called High Federalists aligned with Alexander Hamilton. The Democratic Republicans felt that the Adams foreign policy was too favorable toward Britain. Feared that the new army called up for the Quasi-War would oppress the people. Opposed new taxes to pay for war. And attacked the Alien and Sedition Acts as violations of states' rights and the Constitution. High Federalists considered Adams too moderate and would have preferred the leadership of Alexander Hamilton instead. Hamilton, in his third sabotage attempt towards Adams, schemed to elect vice presidential candidate Charles Pinckney to the presidency. One of Hamilton's letters, a scathing criticism of Adams that was 54 pages long, became public when it came into the hands of a Democratic Republican. It embarrassed Adams and damaged Hamilton's efforts on behalf of Pinckney, not to mention speeding Hamilton's own political decline. Hamilton had apparently grown impatient with Adams and wanted a new president who was more receptive to his pro-federal goals. During Washington's presidency, Hamilton had been able to influence the federal response to the Whiskey Rebellion. When Washington announced that he would not seek a third term, Adams was widely recognized by the Federalists as next in line. Hamilton appears to have hoped in 1796 that his influence within an Adams administration would be as great or greater than in Washington's. By 1800, Hamilton had come to realize that Adams was too independent and chose to support Charles Cotesworth Pinckney of South Carolina. Given Pinckney's lack of political experience, he would have been expected to be open to Hamilton's influence. However, Hamilton's plan backfired and hurt the Federalist Party. Selection method changes, partisans on both sides sought any advantage they could find. In several states, this included changing the process of selecting electors to ensure the desired result. In Georgia, Democratic-Republican legislators replaced the popular vote with selection by the state legislature. Federalist legislators did the same in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. This may have had some unintended consequences in Massachusetts, where the makeup of the delegation to the House of Representatives changed from 12 Federalists and 2 Democratic Republicans to 8 Federalists and 6 Democratic Republicans, perhaps the result of backlash on the part of the electorate. Pennsylvania also switched to legislative choice, but this resulted in an almost evenly split set of electors. Virginia switched from electoral districts to winner-take-all, a move that probably switched 1 or 2 votes out of the Federalist column. Voting equals. Because each state could choose its own election day, voting lasted from April to October. In April, Burr's successful mobilization of the vote in New York City succeeded in reversing the Federalist majority in the state legislature. With the two parties tied 65-65 in the Electoral College, the last state to vote, South Carolina, chose 8 Democratic Republicans, giving the election to Jefferson and Burr. However, the Democratic Republicans neglected to have one of their electors abstain from voting for Burr. Under the United States Constitution as it then stood, each elector cast 2 votes and the candidate with a majority of the votes was elected president, with the vice presidency going to the runner-up. The Federalists, therefore, arranged for one of their electors to vote for John Jay rather than for vice presidential candidate Pinckney. The Democratic Republicans had a similar plan to have one of their electors cast a vote for another candidate instead of Burr, but failed to execute it. By a misadventure, all of the Democratic-Republican electors cast their votes for both Jefferson and Burr, giving them each 73 votes. The tie thus had to be resolved by the House of Representatives, with each state casting 1 vote. Although the election of 1800 had given majority control of the House of Representatives to the Democratic Republicans by 68 seats to 38, the presidential election would be decided by the outgoing House, which had been elected in the Federalist landslide of 1798 and was controlled by the Federalists, 60 seats to 46. At that time, the new presidential term as well as the new congressional term started on March 4. Disputes equals. Defective certificates. When the electoral ballots were opened and counted on February 11, 1801, it turned out that the certificate of election from Georgia was defective. While it was clear that the electors had cast their votes for Jefferson and Burr, the certificate did not take the constitutionally mandated form of a list of all the persons voted for, and of the number of votes for each. Vice President Jefferson, who was counting the votes in his role as President of the Senate, immediately counted the votes from Georgia as votes for Jefferson and Burr. No objections were raised. If disputed, Jefferson and Burr would have lost 4 electoral votes, leaving them with 69 electoral votes each. The counting of the votes would have failed to result in a majority of 70 votes for any of the 4 candidates, causing a constitutionally mandated congressional runoff among the top 5 finishers. Instead, the total number of votes for Jefferson and Burr was 73, a majority of the total, but a tie between them. Results equals. Of the 155 counties independent cities making returns, Jefferson won in 115 while Adams carried 40. Jefferson and Burr tied for first place, so the election was thrown into the House of Representatives. Source: U.S. President National Vote. Our campaign source: Electoral College Box Scores 1789 1996. Official website of the National Archives. A. Votes for Federalist electors have been assigned to John Adams and votes for Democratic-Republican electors have been assigned to Thomas Jefferson. B. Only 6 of the 16 states chose electors by any form of popular vote. C. Those states that did choose electors by popular vote had widely varying restrictions on suffrage via property requirements. D. A faithless elector in New York voted twice for Aaron Burr, but this violated Electoral College rules and so the second vote was reassigned to Thomas Jefferson. Breakdown by ticket. Contingent election of 1801. The members of the House of Representatives balloted as states to determine whether Jefferson or Burr would become president. There were 16 states, and an absolute majority in this case, an was required for victory. It was the outgoing House of Representatives, controlled by the Federalist Party, that was charged with electing the new president. While it was common knowledge that Jefferson was the candidate for president and Burr for vice president, many Federalists were unwilling to support Jefferson, their partisan nemesis. After all, Jefferson had been the principal opponent of Federalists since 1789. Seizing an opportunity to deny Jefferson the presidency, most Federalists voted for Burr, giving Burr 6 of the 8 states controlled by Federalists. The 7 delegations controlled by Democratic Republicans all voted for Jefferson, and Georgia's sole Federalist representative also voted for him, giving him 8 states. Vermont was evenly split, and cast a blank ballot. The remaining state, Maryland, had 5 Federalist representatives to 3 Democratic Republicans. One of its Federalist representatives voted for Jefferson, forcing that state delegation also to cast a blank ballot. Over the course of 7 days, from February 11 to 17, the House cast a total of 35 ballots, with Jefferson receiving the votes of 8 state delegations each to mere 1 short of the necessary majority of 9. During the contest, Hamilton recommended to Federalists that they support Jefferson because he was by far not so dangerous a man as Burr. In short, he would much rather have someone with wrong principles than someone devoid of any. Hamilton embarked on a frenzied letter-writing campaign to get delegates to switch votes. On February 17, on the 36th ballot, Jefferson was elected. Federalist James A. Bayard of Delaware and his allies in Maryland and Vermont all cast blank ballots. This resulted in the Maryland and Vermont votes changing from no selection to Jefferson, giving him the votes of 10 states in the presidency. Bayard, as the sole representative from Delaware, changed his vote from Burr to no selection. The 4 present representatives from South Carolina, all Federalists, also changed their 3-1 selection of Burr to 4 abstentions. Results A. The votes of the representatives is typical and may have fluctuated from ballot to ballot, but the result for each state did not change. B. Even though Georgia had 2 representatives apportioned, 1 seat was vacant due to the death of James Jones. C. Even though South Carolina had 6 representatives apportioned, Thomas Sumter was absent due to illness, and Abraham not departed for South Carolina between the first and final ballots. Electoral College selection. The Constitution, in Article 2, Section 1, provided that the state legislatures should decide the manner in which their electors were chosen. Different state legislatures chose different methods. See also, History of the United States, United States House of Representatives elections, 1800, United States House of Representatives elections, 1798, first inauguration of Thomas Jefferson, Stephen Simpson. Notes. References. Primary references Annals of the Congress of the United States, Washington, D.C. Gales and Seaton, 1834–1856, pages 10–1028–1033, A Historical Analysis of the Electoral College. The Green Papers. retrieved March 20, 2005. Inline references. Bibliography. Benatar, Daron. Aberg, Barbara B., eds., Federalists Reconsidered, University of Virginia Press, ISBN 978-0-8139-1863-1, Parsley, Jeffrey L. A.L., eds., Beyond the Founders, New Approaches to the Political History of the Early American Republic, University of North Carolina Press, ISBN 978-0-8078-5558-4, Beard, Charles A., The Economic Origins of Jeffersonian Democracy, ISBN 978-1-146-80267-3, Bowling, Kenneth R. Donald R. Kennan, Establishing Congress, The Removal to Washington, D.C., and the Election of 1800, Ohio University Press, ISBN 978-0-8214-1619-8, Buell, Richard, Securing the Revolution, Ideology in American Politics, 1789–1815, Chambers, William Nisbet, Political Parties in a New Nation, The American Experience, 1776–1809, Trow, Ron, Alexander Hamilton, Penguin, ISBN 978-0-14-303475-9, Cunningham, Noble E., J.R., The Making of the American Party System 1789–1809, Dunn, Susan, Jefferson's Second Revolution, The Election Crisis of 1800 and the Triumph of Republicanism, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, ISBN 978-0-618-13164-8, Elkins, Stanley. Eric McKetrick, The Age of Federalism, Furling, John, Adams vs. Jefferson, The Tumultuous Election of 1800, Fisher, David Hackett, The Revolution of American Conservatism, The Federalist Party in the Era of Jeffersonian Democracy, Freeman, Joanne B., Affairs of Honor, National Politics in the New Republic, Freeman, Joanne B., The Election of 1800, A Study in the Logic of Political Change, Yale Law Journal 108, 1959–1994, doi, 10.2307/797378, JSTOR. 797,378, Goodman, Paul, The First American Party System, in Chambers, William Nisbet. Burnham, Walter Dean, The American Party Systems, Stages of Political Development, pages 56–89, Hofstadter, Richard, The Idea of a Party System, Kennedy, Roger G., Burr, Hamilton, and Jefferson, A Study in Character, Oxford University Press, McCulloch, David, John Adams, Horn, James P.P. Lewis, Jan Ellen. Onov, Peter S., The Revolution of 1800, Democracy, Race, and the New Republic, Miller, John C., Alexander Hamilton, Portrait in Paradox, Roberts, Cokie, Ladies of Liberty, Skutchner, Nathan, Aaron Burr, A Biography, Schlesinger, Arthur Meyer, ed., History of American Presidential Elections, 1789–1984, Volume 1, Essay and Primary Sources on 1800. Sharp, James Roger. The Deadlocked Election of 1800, Jefferson, Burr, and the Union in the Balance 239 pages. Wills, Gary, Negro President Jefferson and the Slave Power, Houghton Mifflin Company, pages 47–89, ISBN 0-618-34398-9. Also listed as from Mariner Books in 2004, 1. External links, Presidential Election of 1800, A Resource Guide from the Library of Congress, Documentary Timeline Lesson Plans from NEHA New Nation Votes, American Election Returns 1787–1825, Centennium, Town Map of Election Results in Rhode Island, Centennium, County Map of Election Results in Virginia, Overview at Dave Loeb's Atlas of U.S. Presidential Elections, Booknotes Interview with Bernard Weisberger on America Fire, Jefferson, Adams, and the First Contested Election, February 25, 2001. Booknotes interview with John Ferling on Adams vs. Jefferson, The Tumultuous Election of 1800, October 3, 2004. Election of 1800 in Counting the Votes.